Hey everyone, my name is Chelsea Mason and I will be answering this week's discussion question for Module 10 through a video post. So the first question that was asked this week is, in what ways does having advising hours only during business hours marginalize some students? I think this is a really interesting question, and I instantly think about students who choose to work, students who have to work, distance learners, and commuters. So these four groups of students, it's really hard for them to make time to go into these different offices, not just advising offices. For commuter students, obviously they're already going back and forth between campus and home, and depending on how far that is, they might have a very strict schedule on when they can be on campus and when they have to leave. For distance learners, some of them don't go on campus at any point during their matriculation, as most of their learning may be online. For example, I am a distance learner for Georgia Southern, and I have never been on the campus, nor do I have the time to go on campus. And so it's been a little challenging for me to communicate with my advisors and make sure that I'm on track. And a lot of things that I've done during this program has been just due to my own determination. And I think this will be a challenge in my last semester when I'm going to have to rely on communicating with my advisor about graduation and my practicum. For students who live on campus but choose to work, they might be more invested in picking up hours and picking up shifts at work rather than hanging out on campus waiting for an appointment in a advising center. And for students who have to work, they just might not have the availability to not take that shift at work, just so that they can go to the advising center. So those are some of the different groups that I think of that are marginalized by the limited hours that are offered by some offices. The second question this week was, in what ways does closing housing during Christian religious holidays breaks marginalize some students? And I think about my institution, for example, because I work in residence life. My hall that I manage does close over winter break and during Christmas and New Year's. And so we have a lot of students who might be coming from all parts of the world and outside of our country. And sometimes they don't really have anywhere to go, and closing our hall might mean that they have food insecurities over the break, or that they don't have a roof over their head. Luckily, my institution does have multiple buildings that stay open during these breaks, and so we can kind of work something out to accommodate our students. But for the most part, our buildings do close during these holidays, and so it doesn't really account for those students who might not have somewhere to go or might not celebrate those holidays. The last question for this week was, using the readings and supplemental materials, what ways can you apply an intersectional framework to your work with students? So for this question, I really rely on the ACPA blog because, one, I'm a part of ACPA and I'm looking forward to the conference that's happening this coming week. But also because I think that what they said in this article was really foundational. And that is that applying an intersectional framework is just asking some of these questions that were asked in this discussion post. How does this affect these people, and how does this impact them? Those are some foundational questions that we should continue to ask as we are planning and implementing different things. We have to think about access and availability for our students and kind of think outside of what a typical or average student might need. Students have a multitude of challenges and a multitude of experiences based on their intersectionality of their multiple identities, and so we have to make sure that any programs or any things that we're doing on our campuses are trying to adapt to the different kinds of students. One example that I think of is just with the FAFSA being open, the financial aid process. Some students don't have access, and so meeting students where they are, knowing that every student doesn't have a computer, every student doesn't have access to get to the library during business hours, and so trying to meet students where they are and help navigate that is a great idea. Also thinking about things like gender inclusive housing and gender inclusive restrooms on campus are some ways that we can start applying an intersectional framework to our work with our students. And I think it's something that we have to consider and continue to think about when we are navigating our careers and continuing to work with our students. So that's my thoughts on this week's discussion. I can't wait to read everyone else's and comment. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them on this feed. Thank you.